Don't let your Chrome get tarnished. A new critical flaw could impact you.
Hey Mike, I'm curious to hear the story you have for us today.
Yeah, so came across an article about a new Chrome vulnerability that's kind of got a little bit of mystery wrapped around it. I always find these interesting. So Google's issued this warning in a critical security flaw that's impacting both Windows, Mac, and Linux platforms, and looking for users to upgrade to the most recent version of the Chrome browser as a result of this. Now, the CVE in question is 2020-6457, and at least as of a day or two ago, this was still a placeholder, so there's not really a lot of details around it. And even when you go look at the notification from Google, there's not a lot of details there as well. This appears to be a use after free related issue in the speech recognizer component of the application, which, in worst case scenarios, these types of use after free bugs can effectively become remote code execution flaws. And so there's a lot of speculation out there right now about the amount of secrecy that's around this particular issue, and that it might be something that's actually pretty easy to exploit as a result of, kind of the details kind of being hidden at this point in time. And what's really interesting is when you look at the W3 Counters browser share stats project, and you see that Chrome accounts for 59% of internet browser traffic, with Safari being a far distant second, about 12%, and then the combination of Internet Explorer and the Edge browsers coming in third at a combined 9%. And those statistics represented traffic for the month of March in this year. So you've got this vast population out there of potentially exploitable browsers. And while Chrome does update automatically by default, this does still require at times for the application to be fully restarted. And with people working remotely from home and leaving their computers on and applications open and just kind of coming back to the dining table or wherever their laptop or temporary working station might be, these vulnerabilities, these exposures may actually persist for longer than one would anticipate, even in situations where these applications are automatically updated. So this is an interesting sort of side effect, potentially, of the increased number of work from home type workers right now. And with organizations maybe not having fully tested some of their patching capabilities or their ability to force restarts and things like that across VPN connections to manage some of these issues, it is something of a bit more of an exposure than you might think. So
This vulnerability, double free, I know it's not the same, but there was one just a few weeks ago, I think, with Firefox, also a double free vulnerability, also very similar. They didn't release a lot of the details necessarily. I think the only difference is it was more open source, so you could actually see the patch that was applied. And I think it was even more of a risk because people, the bad guys could just go there and figure out how to exploit something like this. Now, I guess we are lucky as an industry because having learned already for many, many years that the software has to auto update, it's nice to see that, projects like Firefox or Chrome, IE, and they've all implemented this auto update feature for the most part. And I think people usually have to do something special to break that from working. So hopefully, more people will be safer now because they're using a browser that's like auto updating. But I think you've mentioned some very important concerns for enterprises over VPN and things like that, where they probably haven't necessarily tested. Does that work very well? How often does that, before probably didn't have to worry about it as much, but now that most of the workforce is coming in remote, I think, I guess we'll learn what happens.
yeah, browser vulnerabilities are particularly important to address because they are, the kind of attack surface of choice for a lot of end user targeted threats, right? I mean, it's either going to be email or your browser that you, as an end user, traditionally interact with the rest of the world through. and so those attack surfaces are constantly getting bombarded, and really to help maintain your security posture, making sure those are up to date is critical. And what's interesting is that because of personal choice, if you haven't done a good job of locking down permissions, you may have instances of these, non-OS related browsers installed in your environment that you might not be aware of. So as an administrator, if your users have permissions sufficient to download and install their own applications, you could have these potentially vulnerable applications out there in the environment that might not be under your administrative control or even on the radar. So it is important to make sure that you are identifying those potential attack surfaces and vulnerabilities through ongoing scanning, both at the, not only at the operating system for the endpoint, but also making sure that there's no vulnerable applications on there as well. And there's any number of solutions out there that can do that.
I also think that your point that you have to make sure that you start is critical, right? Especially if so many more people are using mobile, that if they have to restart their devices to make sure that the new updates are fully downloaded and executed, then that's an important point. That a lot of people don't turn their devices off very often.
Yes, I know I've personally made a commitment to restart my laptop every day. But most of it is because of buggy software that I just want to clear my memory out.
I was about to say, is that choice really up to you, or does it just restart on its own?
And do you do that with your phone too, Stan?
My phone, I probably, at the risk of telling everyone on YouTube what I do with my phone, I keep it very secure.
We can keep it secret, right? We'll keep that a secret. Right.